Hi guys, welcome to another episode of the Grapplers Academy. We're on episode 57. Before we get into it, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe button. If you're on YouTube, drop a comment below. And if you want to make sure you don't miss any of our technique videos or podcast episodes, hit that notification button and you'll be notified whenever we release something new. We sort of ended last week's podcast suggesting the Rickson Gracie, Jocko Willink podcast episode. And it's a lot to take in. It's a really good listen, really hard to put down. But for me, we spoke before, and I've been sort of rewinding, taking chunks away, going away, digesting it, and then coming back to it. So I'm about halfway through, and you're a little bit ahead of me on it, aren't you?
Yeah, I've not listened to the full thing yet, but listening to Rickson talk about anything, he's so philosophical about stuff, and some of the stuff that's not super philosophical, he's talking about his upbringing in Brazil. And, some interesting stories there. But he goes into his ideas about his breathing techniques and why him and his relatives are the mindset that they are. And the way that they approach jiu-jitsu as an art and a lifestyle, and the reason why they've been brought up with that, with their dads and their uncles, and that's just really interesting. Listen, if you've not listened to it yet, definitely go and check it out. It's quite a long one. I think it's about 3 hours long.
Something like that,
I don't think there are any short Jocko podcasts.
No.
At least 2 hours.
I was having a look at his episode list and I was like, oh, yeah, he's got
I don't know whether I've wasted a lot of time or learnt a lot, but I've listened to all of them. And there's about 260 episodes, and they're all at least 2.5 hours long.
Yeah.
So I put some hours in on that. I could have got a degree, probably. I probably could have got multiple degrees in the same amount of time that I've been listening to the Jocko podcast.
Got a PhD in Jocko.
A Jocko PhD. I'm going to email him and see if I can get a certificate off that basis. I think he'll probably tell me to fuck off.
But it's got a really good overriding message on it throughout the whole of the episode, where he opens it up with a great monologue, or sort of like a prologue that he wrote for Rickson's book. And yeah, I've got to say, even after listening to the podcast, I'm gonna definitely go out there and get the book for it. So in fact, I found the story interesting about his mum, and how the woman who raised him, his dad's wife, wasn't his biological mum, and he was actually birthed by the maid in the house, and she wore a fake pregnancy belly throughout the duration of it, and even went to the hospital when he was being born and brought him home as her own. So imagine that being a very difficult conversation.
Yeah, that's an elaborate ruse, isn't it? To go to that much of an extent several times.
Yeah.
To pull that off, but yeah, I'd not heard that story before, and I found that super interesting. If you've listened to Rickson on Joe Rogan, and maybe just listen to him talk on some of his other documentaries or interviews and stuff, you've probably heard some of the stories before. You go over some stuff that I've heard before and some stuff that you guys have probably heard before as well. But there's a couple of interesting nuggets that I've not heard, that being one of them.
Yeah.
And the book sounds like it fleshes out a lot more of those stories and gives a bit more background into them.
Yeah, definitely. There's going back to sort of that prologue as well, I really found it interesting about the message that Jocko took away from his first experience with Rickson, where it was, you do well under pressure. And I think what I'm taking away from it is he accredits a lot of his success in the military down to his sort of ability to transfer the skills that he gained from grappling and applying them into different areas of his life. And he kind of sort of sees where the cross references for his military career and his grappling abilities and career as well.
Yeah, I mean, he talks about it a lot. He credits jiu-jitsu heavily for the ideas and the thought processes that he puts into his work in the military, and then what he's done outside of that as well with the corporate stuff and the leadership business that he's got going now. And he says he probably would have come to similar ideas that he would have done without jiu-jitsu, but jiu-jitsu just accelerated that learning process.
Yeah.
Helped him think about ways to not be too direct with people. Example would be if you just want to attack the headlock or attack a guillotine and you're just going too strong in on the guillotine, it's going to be obvious what you're going for, and they're going to defend like that. But flanking, attacking the arms to open the neck up, he talks about all those concepts and how they apply in the workplace, how that just applies for interactions with partnerships and relationships with other people. Super interesting podcast. Like I said, I've listened to, it's got to be thousands of hours of it now, hundreds of hours, if not getting close to thousands.
Well, if it's average 2 hours and the 206, that's over 500 hours.
They're more, some of them are 4 or 5 hours, they're long podcasts. But there's a lot to take in there, and if you listen and you extrapolate the information, it's really handy. You can put it into place not only on the mats in jiu-jitsu, but like the way that you can use that outside as well in just family and friends relationships, in the workplace. Just helps you see everything a lot clearer, and gives you that point of frame of reference as well. And it works both ways, because if you can understand the concept of how something works from a jiu-jitsu point of view, and then understand how to overlay that onto a work situation, you can do the same in reverse. So whenever I get people come in who are new to jiu-jitsu and you're teaching them, you might find out a little bit about them and find out about the job or what the family dynamic is at home, and then you can overlay that information and be like, well, this is like when you're doing this at work, and this is how to use that information to get what you want or go around this problem. And then when you see people have that light bulb moment, it just switches on, and that learning process just accelerates rapidly from that point of view.
Oh, definitely. And like, you start to pull in, rather than using your sort of jiu-jitsu experience to sort of like also make life that little bit easier or get through difficult times, it starts to work both ways as well. So then you'll bring in, say, your problem solving skill set into your jiu-jitsu, your might have a mindset of never quitting, and that'll come over, or they'll sort of cross over there as well, and sort of once you get that light bulb moment, it does kind of expand and become more than a martial art or even a sport that you train in.
Yeah, and it's like what you were saying about the prologue or the introduction to the book. They were talking about being relaxed or being comfortable in bad situations. This is basically what jiu-jitsu is, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's inoculating yourself to that claustrophobic violence, and being able to internalise and relax. And whenever you've had a beginner who's very tense, the advice is always relax, isn't it? And I always tell people to think their way through the problem and breathe, and try and go through it that way, rather than getting very tense, getting very hyperventilating with the breath and trying to attack that problem head on. Doesn't work. And you see this all the time on the mats when it's like someone fairly new to jiu-jitsu, and that can be within the first couple of years still, even if they've not got into the right mindset with it. They'll get very agitated in a situation that they're uncomfortable with, or they'll get overly excited if they see an opportunity that they think they can get, and they'll rush. But as the more advanced player or the coach, you just say to that person, relax and think your way through the problem. What are the steps that you need to go through to achieve what you want to achieve? Not I'm at point A and I can see point D, so I'm going to try and jump to that. There's reasons why there's those things in place in between, and it's hard for people to get that sometimes early on. And that's why it's even better if they've got a frame of reference that they can compare it to, whether that's work or another sport that they've played, for example. But I think that's one of those biggest breakthrough moments for somebody early on in the sport. To help them develop.
Yeah, because you can sort of almost see it in just the way they carry themselves when they have that relaxing breakthrough moment in jiu-jitsu. They relax more off the mat as well, because it's very common to see when someone comes through and they're an intense character, and that does transfer over onto the mats. But then when they have that ability to sort of relax when they're sparring and when they're in a bad situation, that does, going back to what we were saying before, it transfers right the way over to life. So when you are going through a shit situation, you might be under pressure at work, or relationships not going as planned, and there's lots of ups and downs with it, your ability to remove yourself from the situation and think through it in a more calm way and sort of process information differently, it affects the way that you, basically your personality and your rationale changes, and approach to a lot of things will be affected. And I'd say adjusted from your time on the mat and experiencing those high pressure situations.
Yeah, it's like if you're going to do something stressful in life, like any of those things that you said, or you've got a task that you need to do as a group, you've got to think about what sort of people would you want to surround yourself with.
Yeah.
Would you want to surround yourself with people who are calmly going to assess the problem, discuss how to attack it, have a plan on how to do it? Or would you want to surround yourself with a bunch of people who are going to get panicked, start screaming about it, get emotional, lose their composure? There's a funny saying that they've said on Jocko before, one of the guys that came on, I can't remember who it was, but it was funny. He was like, I'd rather go to war with 4 studs than 100 shitheads.
Yeah.
And it's true. You've got to think about the quality of the people that you're surrounding yourself with, and those people that are your good training partners on the mat. The chances are that when you step back and look at the qualities that they provide as a training partner or like a training opponent, is they're probably pretty calm and relaxed. They can turn on the intensity when they need to. They can think their way through a problem.
Yeah.
And they're providing creative problems for you to try and navigate around as well. There's almost nothing more boring than having the same role week in, week out with the same person. It becomes very stale very quickly.
Yeah, oh yeah, definitely. But then another great thing as well to sort of go off that is you're still going to have those characters on the mat when they do roles, so then you will have the variety on there as well. So having that really intense player, even if they may have transferred the sort of more calming skill set to off the mat, but they're still going to be a very intense, angry role on the mat, you've got that variety there as well. So you can go to that person for that when you want that kind of role, but you can also try to almost teach them to bring it down a notch when they need it.
Even in those situations though, that for people who are good but still have that intensity, that's that controlled aggression, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's the spazzy energy that we're talking about that you want to get out of your head of being relaxed. You can still provide intensity to the round, but controlled intensity. So you can take it up to 6th gear and rev it to 9,000 RPM, but you controlled and you know what you're doing. I think the breakthrough moment for people who've got a lot of useless energy to provide to the mat, where it's wasting energy, they're not tiring you out, they're tiring themselves out by first thing is in their head making poor decisions because they don't know what to do. So like your brain's eating up a lot of your energy. You're not thinking about your breathing. Think about all the times that you're in a shitty position on the mats. First thing that you want to try and do is relax and then think, right, shit, where do I need to go now? Rather than just fuck, I don't know what's going on, and breathing, panicking, and just trying to frame out and push your arms out. Putting yourself in bad positions, and guess what? You're just going to get out of bed. You start freaking out.
Well, that was another overriding theme, wasn't it, of the where I'm up to so far on the podcast, where the importance of breathing. Rickson talks about his sort of breakthrough moment with that, and I found the story what he told about getting wrapped in the carpet during the summer. I was like, I see what you're doing there, like, fair play to get over that claustrophobia. But yeah, the ability to breathe and take that deep breath in to control, basically trying to control that parasympathetic system, your fight or flight, and not letting your emotions control you, and using that breathing, bringing your heart rate down, using your lungs to just really fill the blood full of oxygen, and using that there to, okay, I'm in a bad situation. If I start hyperventilating and my breathing gets elevated, I'm not going to think rationally. Or if I take a deep breath, calculate, realise the situation I'm in, and then I can start to cultivate a plan to get out of there.
Something he's spoken about before as well. I think he spoke about it on Joe Rogan, but the importance of breathing for regulating the heart rate.
Yeah.
And if you're in a tough and intense match, and you know what it's like when your heart rate's up and you're fighting and gasping for energy, if you can be the person who's more in control of the breathing and be always a little bit ahead of your opponent or behind, if you want to think about it from the proper point of view, have a lower heart rate than them. When it's your turn to push the pace, if they're already at pretty much near maximal on their heart rate and you've still got a little bit left in the tank, you can push them further, and then you're going to get those more opportunities then. because they can't keep up with your pace.
No, definitely.
So, breathing is as much of a benefit for mental clarity as it is for getting your body to be most optimal for what you want it to do when you need to do it. Because if you're wasting energy as well, and if you're the person who's on the bottom and you've got an elevated heart rate, you're not thinking clearly. If you do manage to get out and escape the position that you're in, chances are that when you come up on top, and I was having this conversation only with somebody earlier this week, you escape a bad position, and let's say you come up and you manage to get yourself back into a closed guard or a half guard, and you just sit there and rest. Well, guess what? Your opponent's tired as well.
Yeah.
So who's got more will? Who's going to put their foot on the gas now to get to that next better position? Because I tell you what, if you just sit there and just rest, your opponent's going to rest, and then they're going to tighten up the grips, they're going to secure a better position, and then they're going to be the one who can put their foot on the gas next and get into a better position. So if you find yourself in a position where you've capitalised on either a mistake from your opponent or you've done something good to get yourself from a bad position into a good position, it's not really a time to rest, that's the time to go forward and push the pace.
No, definitely. Because we all know, well, not everybody, but as you get more experience, you do find those positions where you can find that rest point while your partner's still not able to rest, and you have to make sure you get to those points before you do it. Kind of like going back to maybe how Jocko would refer to it, it's like a military checkpoint. If you're on the defence and then you manage to get them on the back foot and you keep pushing forward, they're going to be more reactive, and then once you find your checkpoint and you can sit and then take a deep breath and then start to mount your attack, they're still trying to play catch up. So then you found that moment to bring your heart rate back down without allowing theirs to come back down as well.
Kind of a perfect example of it from a jiu-jitsu point of view is like, let's say you've been on the bottom and you manage to get a sweep or a reversal, and you're tired and you fought for it hard and you end up in a closed guard. Like, nobody's winning there really.
No.
If you're going to take a breath there, you're just in a neutral position.
Yeah.
Maybe in a worse position because the guy can throw up some arm bars or a triangle or something like this. That's an example of like a neutral or a bad resting position. But if you can manage to pass that and now come to knee on belly, you're in a resting position because it's not taking a lot of energy for you to sit there, and you can get your breath back. But I can guarantee that the person underneath doesn't want to be resting there.
No.
So you're going to be forcing them to make decisions while you're resting, putting them under pressure, getting their heart rate elevated, making sure that they're the one that's going to do something, and then you're finding those opportunities to react to their bad decisions. If they just want to chill out there underneath on that knee on belly, you're still draining energy from them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I say we'll make a correction as well. Not knee on belly, knee on sternum.
Knee on sternum. Yeah, these positions of knee on belly, isn't it?
Yeah.
Across the hips, I'm being nice. In the middle of the belly, we're having a bit of fun. In your sternum, I don't like you.
Yeah.
Or I really like you. If it's gi, collar, belt, yeah.
Keep pulling until you get that tap.
Yeah. And I've got more respect for you if you don't tap.
Yeah. Yeah. Because it does translate really well over as well, especially with the breathing, to competition as well. So I had a couple of guys over the weekend competing at the All-Stars comp, and in between their fights, like some of them it was their first time competing, so you could tell that adrenaline was high, and then when they're coming off the mat there's that adrenaline crash, and they've only got really 5 minutes to recover because of how quickly the brackets were going through. So I was trying to sort of remind them, deep breaths, control that breathing, get some fresh air, especially in the sports hall where it's just stuffy, lack of oxygen, sweaty air. Go and get some oxygen in your system, get that breathing going, bring your heart rate back down, and then start moving again. So it translates over for just rolling in the gym, taking it over to your outside life, and if you were in a competitive environment or even a self-defense environment, just taking that breath to control the emotions and the adrenaline and all your other bodily functions to really sort of think through what you're doing and avoiding getting to that flight reaction so you can go into the fight, unless self-defense and you need to flight and get your ass out of there.
Nervous energy will fuck you up
big
time. Like, even just an example, that isn't as fight or flight as like, you know, being in the gym and you're about to get the bar on your back for a big heavy lift.
Yeah.
If you've got nervous energy before you get under the bar and your heart rate's up and you're thinking in your head, I don't know whether I can do this, the chances are you're not going to do it.
Yeah.
Because you're talking yourself out of it before you even get under the bar. Like, you know you're capable of doing it. If you're competing on the mats, you know you're capable of doing jiu-jitsu. The other guy's jiu-jitsu might be better than yours, but you still know how to do jiu-jitsu. So go out there and do what you know, but be able to centre yourself before you do. And just think about, you know, we're in competition day and I've trained hard for it, but there's nothing different. It's me and another guy on the mat. I know what I'm doing and I'm going to focus in and switch in on that. You know, so if you've got examples of like how you deal with stress, I always think it sounds like an interview question, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Tell me a time where you've dealt with a stressful situation. But it's serious though, isn't it? It's like, you know, how can I draw energy from when I've been stressed before and what do I do? Like, do I actually just panic and flip out and I've got a shit way of dealing with it and actually don't know what to do with myself? Or do I just relax in, take a couple of big breaths in and then just approach the task? Have your checklist of things that you want to do.
Yeah.
You know, if you're going onto the mat for a competition and you're rolling, you probably should have a good idea of the ideal takedown that you want to do, and then you can react if that doesn't go well. The ideal submission that you're going to try and get if you get to the position that you want. If you're going in and it's just maybe a little bit wild, then yeah, your brain's going to be a little bit more scattered, so it's going to be harder to focus. So having a game plan and focusing in on your breathing and trying to relax is big, because you eat up a lot of energy with that nervous energy. If you had a heart rate monitor on, you'd be able to see the difference in terms of when you mentally overly engaged versus when you're relaxed and calm down.
Yeah, and even as well, sometimes you might need that breathing to get yourself to the right level of engagement, because if you go into it too relaxed and like your heart rate's not where it needs to be and your mind's not where it needs to be, you're going to end up in a bad situation there again. Like, kind of, for those who are sort of wanting to dive deeper into this, we did an episode a few weeks ago, The Psychologist, where we go into a lot more detail on that and the other methods and techniques you can use. So go back and find that episode. It's really worth a listen. But yeah, like using it to, well, it's called like it's arousal level, isn't it? Using your breathing to get your heart rate and your mind into that right arousal level, so then you can go out and do the task at hand. Because if you're too high, you're going to gas yourself out and make mistakes. If you're too low, you're going to go in there just not prepared to actually engage properly. Getting that just right will give you a better performance, but it's hard. It is difficult. Like, you need practice at it. It's not something that you're going to get first time round. That's where, like, if you do compete and it doesn't go your way first time, go back and have a look. Was your technique right? Was your intensity right? If you tick those boxes, then maybe your mindset leading up to the fight wasn't right. Like, if you've ticked all the physical boxes there, then you need to go and look at preparation leading up to the fight. Was your mind in the right place? Were you correctly warmed up? Was your breathing stepping onto the mat right? Like, you'll see a lot of the top competitors, just before they step on, if they do like their little personal ritual, a lot of it will involve taking a deep breath and then stepping onto the mat as they're breathing out. And that's not by accident, that's purely on purpose, because they're preparing themselves to go out there and perform.
You can get that practice in the gym as well, can't you? You know, like another thing that Rickson talked about, which I thought was interesting, which is something that I definitely know to be true, but maybe not something that you always think about necessarily, because it seems counterproductive, is getting a good sweat on before you go into your hard competition. So, you know, if you've got a big fight on, getting a good sweat on in the changing room or the locker room, like you see UFC guys do it. You know, you don't want to come out completely relaxed. No. It's like trying to run a car engine. You know, go and do a quarter-mile sprint in a car when you've not warmed the engine up already. Yeah. I always find that, and you know, you guys listening can probably relate to this as well. Like, if you're doing some open rounds or a comp class or an open mat, you might find that your second and third rounds are better once you've got that initial blowout of gas. Yeah. And you've come back down and relaxed. Like, always, the first round feels a bit like you're getting your breath. if you just go straight into it without a real good warm-up. You feel a bit tired, even though technically you're the freshest that you were on the day. You weren't physically prepared for that level of interaction. So like blowing a bit of energy out first, but not so much that you're going to fuck yourself up for the actual competition is a really important tool to do, and that's warming up properly.
Oh, definitely.
But you've got to know your own body well enough to be able to do that, to not use too much energy up.
Yeah, it's like because Rickson says that his warm-up was 45 minutes, and Dan Gable on Joe Rogan's episode was exactly the same. He has to get a good sweat on, he's warming up for 45 minutes, and it's almost like they're trying to find, like, is it what runners call the second wind? You're getting that initial nervous energy out of your system through exercise, so you can go in there with that clarity and your body feeling ready to go.
Yeah, primed and tuned and switched on.
That's it.
Yeah, I wouldn't have liked to fight Rickson back in the day, man.
No.
Absolute animal.
No, like, I just go into the story of where the sort of gym raids are starting, and one of the coaches, he sort of gift wrapped him, side control, punching him. He's like, do you want to give up? And he's like, no, you're going to have to kill me. So then he elbows him a few more times and the guy concedes, and I was like...
Yeah, quit.
Yeah.
A couple of elbows to the back of the head will probably do that.
Oh yeah, definitely.
It's amazing when you watch him from back in the day though, isn't it? It's like back take, punch, choke. Have you ever watched the documentary Choke?
Yeah, I love that documentary.
Yeah. Really good documentary. Like if you might be able to find it on YouTube. I think it gets taken down and put back up. I don't know if you can get it on DVD, but if you've not seen that, get a hold of it and watch it. Cause
pretty sure it's on Prime as well, so if you can't find it on YouTube, you might be able to rent it on Prime.
Awesome.
Really
worth a watch.
Yeah, 100%.
You know, all the things that you're hearing in the book and that we're talking about today and you can listen to on the podcast, you get to see it. This is the era that he's talking about, where he's fighting in Japan, fighting Vale-Tudo. You get to see Rickson's intensity. And it's different. He's older now. He's more relaxed, but he still speaks with the same intensity. See him as a younger man, and see that do or die mentality that he talks about. Yeah, he lives that lifestyle, doesn't he?
Oh, 100%. And like the scenes where he's doing his breathing exercises in an ice cold river, it's like I was getting cold watching it.
Yeah. No, it's funny, man.
Well, like speaking of documentaries, are there any other ones where you've watched? Probably say more so from that era, or of like where it's followed fighters round, where you've watched going, I can watch that again, because I'm like that with Joke, where I can watch them documentary over and over.
I don't think I've watched any like fight specific ones, to be honest. I've watched a couple of like modern era like mini documentaries and stuff like that following wrestlers and jiu-jitsu players, but if we're talking documentaries, a little bit off track, but when we had Dan Strauss, so forgetting then, when we had Dan Strauss on the news telling us about that AlphaGo documentary. Yeah. I don't know whether you watched that yet, but that's a really good watch. It's probably about an hour and a half long, and it's more about the strategy of things and that creativity aspect. If you're looking at Rickson as being that deadpan samurai warrior with the intent, and you're looking at another documentary like this AlphaGo and combining those two thought processes, if you can translate that over onto the mats, you're going to be an intense competitor. Yeah,
no, definitely. Like I say on that subject, like there's a couple where, like the Evan Tanner documentary, I think it's available on Vimeo, really good. The Jocko Gracie one, really worth a watch.
I've not seen this.
I'll send you a link for that, because it's on that Vimeo as well. And one that I keep hearing about that I've not watched yet is the Mark Kerr Smashing Machine.
Yeah, that's good.
I've heard that's amazing to watch.
I think the other thing that's good about the Choke documentary as well is like it does follow Rickson, but it also follows a lot of the other fighters in the competition as well. And it was kind of like back in that early days UFC era, even though the competition's happening in Japan, where it's like these are kickboxer, these are catch wrestler, and it's that clash of styles, and it's interesting to watch. Yeah. And you see the Gracie train coming in, and they're all there with the white towels on their heads and all
hands on shoulders, and
it's cool, man. It's cool. It's really interesting to listen a little bit further on from where you're at as well in it. and they're talking about, you know, the differences between Gracie Jiu-Jitsu and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and just Jiu-Jitsu now. And, you know, Rickson's a big advocate of that self-defense aspect of Jiu-Jitsu as well, and talking about the importance of that. And he talks about the way that the family kind of divided it up into being more sport focused, and, you know, some people have gone the other way too far of being just all self-defense focused. And, you know, like the guys who are doing just the Ibjjjf competition style Jiu-Jitsu is great, but like they don't know what to do in a fight, really. And the self-defense guys have got the self-defense techniques, but they don't spar with enough intensity like the sport jiu-jitsu guys do to actually put them into practice. So they've got all these techniques, but never actually putting it into practice in real life and finding that intensity. And, you know, it is a bit of a criticism that you see from some clubs as well. You know, if a guy's coming over from a club and you've got a reputation for being one of those clubs that doesn't spar too much. They might have been training for a couple of years or be a blue belt, even maybe. But, you know, like, you roll with them and they feel like a newbie.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think as well, there was a point where he was talking about his relationship with Halls Gracie as well. And when he mentioned about he was the top dog of the family, wasn't he, for a while, until Rickson sort of beat him in a spy. Said nobody saw it, but I knew I didn't have to repeat it. But what I thought was very interesting was Halls was the one that was cross training, so he was doing wrestling, sambo, judo, and then bringing things over that he thought would apply well to the sport. And he was the one that was the top dog on the mat. So when you get the sort of jiu-jitsu purists, it's kind of like you really shooting yourself in the foot there for your own progression by not even just expressing an interest in these other sports. And that's where I think the self-defense lot and the sport only lot really do sort of miss the point of the sport. Like, rolling with strikes is a very different experience. Like, you're not gonna invert on somebody and try and attack the leg when you've got the ability to get punched in the face.
Yeah, I mean, we spoke about it before. I came from initially into grappling through MMA. So that was my initial exposure to it. So I've always been mindful of getting punched as well while you're doing jiu-jitsu. And some stuff that you just go for now when you just train in jiu-jitsu, you're like, oh, I can get smashed in the face. But what was interesting about when Rickson was talking about that time period and that cross-training is, he was saying his brother was not just doing judo to get good at judo. He was like, what can we take from judo to make jiu-jitsu better? What can we take from sambo to make Gracie jiu-jitsu better? Not, I want to go and learn sambo for the sake of learning sambo. It's like, how can I improve it? And a little bit later on, they're talking about the first UFC as well, and when Ken Shamrock had a footlock on, and Hoist just knew what to do to get out of it straight away. No even issues. And, you know, footlocks back in 1993, people are saying that the footlock game's a more modern thing. It's happened over the last 5 years, sort of thing. You go back and watch that match, and he's escaping a heel hook, basically with like just from muscle memory. So they must have been training that back then.
Oh, definitely. Well, it's like heel hooks and toe holds have always been part of catch wrestling. Like, if you look through the history of the sport, there's black and white pictures of men in sort of like the pugilistic kind of outfits, showing knee bars, toe holds, the outside ashigarami, and all those different positions and attacking the feet, but from over 100 years ago. So it's not a new concept. It's just, I think it's a concept that became taboo in the sport of grappling, didn't it? Because of I remember hearing a story of Eddie Bravo attacking a toe hold on somebody, and they were throwing chairs, flip-flops, like riots in the stands for attacking someone that's in the rule book, but because it was seen as dirty, it's like, well, it's not really dirty if it's part of the rule set.
I wonder whether that goes down to like those days where they were in the early on after the success of the UFC, where the Gracie family and the Machados and all that stuff started to branch off in separate directions, and the Ibjjjf No, there's a lot of J's in there. The sports stuff, like going to competitions in Brazil, and then being like, nah, fuck that leg lock shit, that doesn't work.
Yeah.
And then we're just going to boo you if you do it, and it's illegal. It's like what judo are doing now, isn't it? You know, like you can't double leg because it's effective.
Yeah.
Like, so now you're not allowed to attack below the hips. You're not allowed to attack the legs in judo, which is bullshit.
Yeah.
And there's a couple of other different weird things like that, isn't there, in various sports, but.
Because you just showed me a clip from the Polaris on the weekend where judo was used perfectly to counter wrestling.
Amazing technique.
So it's like you're really just hindering the progress of your athletes and the sport by putting in these rule sets.
Yeah.
And for me, that strengthens the argument of I don't want jiu-jitsu in the Olympics. Because the rule set's going to change so much to make it more of a spectator thing and water down the rules. So it's no longer going to become a pure grappling sport.
Mm.
It's going to be, oh well, we can't have these exchanges in here because it slows the match down. Like you can't really have the footlock game in the Olympics because you're going to get double guard pulls. And it's going to be a really boring match until someone gets it.
Can you imagine the BBC's coverage of jiu-jitsu in the Olympics?
Oh, the football commentator.
What the fuck is going on here? Right, we're going to bring our specialist footlock commentator in now to explain this position.
Like you're going to have knowledge of the sport to appreciate. Like if you show a non-practitioner the Musumeci Gio Martinez match, they're going to look at it like, what are they doing?
They'd have to get people who do the commentary for Polaris or something like that on to do it, because there's just no way that you could get the average commentator.
No.
It'd be ridiculous. It'd be so laughable. I kind of want to see it.
Yeah, do you know what?
Imagine you get don't know why Gary Lineker would do it. Can you imagine fucking Gary Lineker and Michael Owen commentating on the jiu-jitsu? Why don't you stand up, bro?
So he's got hold of the leg. He's wrapping the foot up. I'm not sure what's... Oh, he's got a tap. Okay.
Yeah, and the match is over. But going back to what we were saying there before as well, about where where they started to take a bit of a division in sport style versus self-defense style. You know, Rickson was then talking a little bit about how he treats like beginners coming into the sport and whether they should spar or whether they shouldn't spar. I know you've not listened to that bit yet, but what are your thoughts on that?
For me, like I'm a big fan of situational sparring for the technique you've been learning, and then so the way I run my sort of beginners or fundamentals classes is everything's sequential. So we started off on turtle, showed a back take, and then from the back we showed how to regain mount if they were escaping, and then from there we showed how to escape from mount to guard, and then we're looking at guard this week, but we're going to be showing how to get from guard to side control. So when we're doing the sort of sparring or situational sparring, I do say you can go to the positions that we've covered. So if you're a mount and you see a back take there, take the back, because both partners or both parties know how to escape and stay safe. Now, I think giving them complete free reign of sparring will be detrimental because they're not going to be putting into practice what they've learned, so they're not going to get any of that sort of recall to what they've done, so they're not going to get no application to what they've been learning.
Yeah, he was talking a lot about, sparring can be, or open rolling can be one of those things that makes or breaks someone's experience with jiu-jitsu early on. And you some white belts, you kind of unleashing a wild animal when you take the leash off and give people free rein. So I personally agree with what you were saying then, and that situational sparring is great. But for newer people who are coming in, if they have techniques and they've been for a couple of months, saying like you're welcome to start joining in the sparring classes, but not having that as a must. And letting people still come into it at their own pace. Especially those people who are maybe a bit more timid, or don't like that high intensity because, you know, like it or not, like we were talking about before about people having too much of the wrong energy, there are still some people who've been training for a long time who will try and fuck somebody up who's new on the mat just because they want to kind of like assert their dominance on them. I don't really know what that's about. Like, I don't know what you think you're proving by tapping the new guy in the class who's been to 4 beginners classes and you're just snapping him up with arm bars and really naked chokes for 5 minutes straight. Like, maybe try and teach him a little bit. Yeah. And you might find that you actually end up learning something yourself by doing that. Yeah. But having the option there to do it for those people who want to is a good idea, I think. But then also, you know, rolling is an important part of jiu-jitsu. You can't just do jiu-jitsu by only learning techniques and not learning how to do it with the correct intensity. So it's about trying to introduce the rolling at the time that is right and in the style that's right for the player. Yeah,
like, I think that's what separates grappling or the jiu-jitsu from other martial arts is the sparring aspect of it. Like, we're showing something and then it's being applied into a role. Whereas, let's go to pick on karate, for example. I remember doing that when I was a kid, and a lot of the stuff that you were being taught was for the kata, and it didn't really apply to actual sparring. So blocking a jab with the forearm coming up above the head looks great, but is it really gonna work?
What are you saying? You're diminishing my black belt in karate. No, I agree with you. It's like you know, the techniques are there, but you've got to learn how to apply them when it gets put into practice. And the reality is that they don't all work that well. Some of them work fine.
Oh yeah.
But like in jiu-jitsu, you get shown the technique, and then you get to find out immediately whether it was bullshit or whether it worked. Yeah. There's no and ahhing about it. No. You know, it either worked or it didn't work. And if it didn't work, if you've only just learned it, it's probably because you're not very good at it. But you'll go against somebody who is good at it, and they'll do it on you. And then you go, oh shit, that worked. I was trying to resist it, and then my coach did it on me. Yeah. Safely. Yeah. But just to kind of prove a point, like, this is the thing that I've just showed you. I'm going to show you that it works when you're resisting your hardest not to let it happen, and then you'll have that light bulb moment of like, all right, I maybe should invest some time into learning this and getting good at it.
No, definitely.
But yeah, I think like it's a unique thing, isn't it? You do have to roll in jiu-jitsu to get the most out of it. And I think just going back to something that you were saying before as well, maybe just to wrap up here today, I do like the way that jiu-jitsu, the trajectory of jiu-jitsu grappling is on at the moment, and I don't want to see it go to that Olympic side. No. I want to see it continue to become a bastardised version of all the grappling sports, where it's just like a snowball that's just accumulating more and more as it goes down the hill, and more judo comes in and more sambo comes in.
100%. I'd love to see an ADCC style tournament, but in the gi as well. So you get in the high level judokas coming in with, I've only ever blue, purple belt level of knowledge of the ground side, but if you get thrown on your head, like...
I think some people get fucked up in that.
Yeah. It's like I can't remember who was it who said, like, get punched in the face and black belt becomes a brown belt, gets punched again and becomes a purple belt. It's like, if you take enough impact, it's going to affect your game.
Well, it's like we said before, in why wrestling's so effective in ADCC, you can just rack up a win by points. Yeah. Take them down, stand them back up, take them down, stand them back up. Imagine just getting thrown on your head 10 times in a round by a judo guy who's just got ridiculous judo skill. And like they've got enough knowledge not to get put in a bad... Because some of the downside to judo is the way that they practice the moves, they'll execute the takedown but then end up in a bad position. And I don't get that. It's like, you execute the takedown and now you want to try and end up in a good position and control. Yeah. So they do go for the pin sometimes, but like sometimes they'll do the takedown and just roll through and you end up actually in turtle or with your own back taken. Yeah. But if somebody was just coming into it like an ADCC style, Jesus Christ, how many fucking letters am I putting in these tournaments? Ibjjjf, ADCCCCC. Just fucking somebody up with takedowns in the gi, it'd be horrible. Yeah. And I think there'd be a lot of high level jiu-jitsu players who would not stand a chance because they'd just get annihilated from the takedown game.
And even getting like the sambo lot in. Yeah. And like I say, I'm not too knowledgeable on other gi-based grappling sports, but I certainly think it'll be interesting.
Imagine the typical guard pulling butt scooter just coming into that ADCC tournament, getting just negative pointed, and getting told to stand up over and over again, and then every time they do, boom.
So you're not hitting the mat; the mat's hitting you.
Yeah, I'm hitting you with the mat.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to start learning judo on that basis.
Sounds like a good plan. And on that note, make sure you hit that subscribe button, like button, drop us a comment, and